The mountains at night, where highways disappear into darkness, and the only sound is your engine echoing off ancient rock. Professional drivers know these roads hide something. Tonight, I'm sharing 10 true encounters from truckers who drove routes they wish they never found. These are the most disturbing abandoned mountain road horror stories ever reported. Number 7. Will make you never drive alone again. The dashboard clock read 2:04 a.m. when I first saw her. I'd been driving Route 191 through the San Juan Mountains for 11 straight hours, hauling a load of construction equipment from Moab down to Farmington. My eyes were burning from staring at the endless white lines, and the coffee I'd picked up 3 hours ago had gone cold in the cup holder. The mountains at night have this way of making you feel completely alone. No cell service, no other trucks, just you and the road carved between ancient rock faces that swallow your headlights whole. The only sounds were my engine's steady rumble and the occasional pop of my Jake brake on the steep grades. That's when my headlights caught her. She was standing under a streetlight, one of those old mercury vapor ones that flicker more than they illuminate. The light was cycling through its death throes, casting everything in that sickly yellow-white glow. She was young, maybe mid-20s, wearing jeans and a light jacket completely inappropriate for the mountain cold. Her arm was raised, waving frantically, almost desperately. Every instinct I'd developed over 20 years of driving told me to keep going. You don't stop for strangers on isolated mountain roads at 2 a.m. You just don't. But there was something about the way she moved, the sheer desperation in those waves, that made me ease off the throttle. I told myself I'd just slow down, check if she looked injured or in immediate danger. If she seemed off, I'd radio it in to the state police and let them handle it. But as my headlights fully illuminated her, I could see her face clearly. She was terrified, not threatening, not suspicious, genuinely scared. Against my better judgment, I brought the rig to a complete stop, air brakes hissing in the mountain silence. She ran to the passenger side before I could even reach for the door. I leaned over and cracked the window. "You all right, miss? You need me to call someone?" She didn't answer, just stared at me through the gap with these wide, desperate eyes. Her hair was plastered to her face and neck, dripping water onto her shoulders. That struck me as odd. There hadn't been rain in this region for weeks. The whole area was under drought warnings. "Miss, can you hear me?" Still nothing. But she reached for the door handle. I should have driven off right then. Every horror story I'd ever heard from other drivers started exactly like this. But I convinced myself she might be in shock, maybe escaped from an accident or a bad situation. So I unlocked the door. She climbed in without a word, moving with this strange, fluid motion that didn't quite look natural. The cabin light came on automatically, and I got a better look at her. She was soaking wet, not just her hair, but her entire body. Water dripped from her clothes onto my seat, pooling in the worn leather. Her skin had this pale, almost translucent quality in the dome light. "Where do you need to go?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady and friendly. "Nearest town is about 40 miles ahead. I can drop you at the truck stop there, or we can call the police if you're in trouble." She didn't respond, didn't even look at me, just sat there, staring straight ahead through the windshield with this completely blank expression. Her hands rested in her lap, and I noticed her fingernails were torn, ragged, like she'd been clawing at something. I put the truck back in gear and started rolling, checking my mirrors constantly. My CB radio was on, volume low, the occasional burst of static breaking the silence. I kept waiting for her to say something, anything, but she remained motionless. "Listen, I need to know where you're going." I tried again after about 5 miles. "I can't just drive around aimlessly. I've got a delivery schedule." Nothing, not even a blink. Her chest rose and fell with breath, so I knew she was alive, but it was like she wasn't really there, like she was a shell, and whatever made her a person had been scooped out. The temperature in the cab started dropping. I cranked the heat up, but it didn't help. My breath began fogging in the air, which made no sense. The heater was blasting. I glanced at the temperature gauge. It read 74 degrees, but I could see my own breath. "Are you cold?" I asked her, You're soaking wet. I've got a blanket in the back if you... That's when she turned her head. Not her whole body, just her head. Slow, mechanical, like a doll on a rotating stand. Her eyes locked onto mine, and for the first time, I saw something in them. Not fear, not gratitude, something else. Something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand straight up. Her lips didn't move, but I swear I heard a whisper, barely audible under the engine noise. Thank you for stopping. 20 miles up the road, I'd finally had enough. The cold in the cab was unbearable now, and the silence was worse than any scream. I needed to know what was going on. I turned to her, ready to demand some kind of explanation. The passenger seat was empty, completely empty. I slammed on the brakes, and the truck shuddered to a stop in the middle of the road. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I looked in the back of the cab, in the sleeper berth, even checked the floor. No one. The passenger door was still closed and locked from the inside. But the seat was still wet, soaking wet. Water was pooling in the depression where she'd been sitting, dripping down onto the floor mat. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my flashlight from the side pocket. I checked every inch of that cab, under the seats, in the storage compartments, behind the curtain to the sleeper. Nothing. She was gone. Vanished. But the evidence of her presence was undeniable. The wet seat, the puddle on the floor, even a few long dark hairs on the headrest. I was breathing hard, panic rising in my chest. This wasn't possible. People don't just disappear from locked vehicles. I checked the passenger door 3 times, still locked, still closed. The windows were all up. That's when I remembered something. I fumbled for my phone, hands still shaking, and pulled up my dashcam app. I'd installed front and interior cameras 6 months ago after an insurance dispute. I scrolled back through the footage with trembling fingers. There. 2:04 a.m. I could see myself slowing down, see the figure on the side of the road. I watched myself lean over and unlock the door. And then, nothing. The door opened by itself, closed by itself. But no one got in. The entire 23-minute drive, the passenger seat was empty on the camera. Just me, alone in the cab, occasionally turning my head to talk to empty air. But the seat was wet. Right now. I could see it, touch it. I got out of the truck on shaking legs, needing air, needing to process what I was seeing. That's when I noticed something in my rearview mirror. I turned, looking back at the truck's interior through the passenger window. For just a split second, maybe less than that, I saw her, sitting there, exactly as she'd been, staring forward with those blank eyes. The dome light was on, shining down on her. And that's when I noticed it. That's when everything clicked into a terror so pure I nearly collapsed. She had no shadow. The dome light was directly above her, and I could see my own shadow on the seat behind me through the window. But where her shadow should have been, there was nothing. Just the empty seat, clearly visible beneath where she sat. I blinked, and she was gone again. I don't remember getting back in the truck. Don't remember the next 40 miles. The next thing I knew, I was pulling into a truck stop in Farmington, my entire body cold and clammy with sweat. I went inside, needing coffee, needing to be around people. That's when I saw it. A bulletin board near the entrance covered in missing person flyers and trucking safety notices. One of the flyers made me stop dead. Her face, the same woman, same dark hair, same features, same age. Sarah Mitchell, 24, missing since June 2021. Last seen. I leaned in closer, my stomach turning to ice. Hitchhiking on Route 191 near mile marker 47. Vehicle found at bottom of ravine 3 weeks later. Driver found deceased. Sarah Mitchell still missing. Presumed dead. Mile marker 47. Exactly where I'd picked her up. That was 4 years ago. I checked my passenger seat one more time. Still wet. I touched the water, brought my fingers to my nose. Smelled wrong. Not like rain. Like standing water. Like something that's been sitting stagnant for years. I sold the truck 2 months later. Couldn't drive it anymore. But sometimes, late at night, I still feel that cold. Still see those blank eyes staring forward. And I wonder how many other drivers have stopped for her. How many have driven 20 miles with a ghost in their passenger seat, never knowing until it was too late? I don't pick up hitchhikers anymore. Ever. Not even in broad daylight. Because now I know, some people who are waiting on the side of the road have been waiting a very, very long time. I've been hauling freight for Morrison Logistics for 15 years, and I thought I knew every major route between Pittsburgh and Nashville. But that night, everything I knew got thrown out the window. The call came through at 6 p.m., a last-minute delivery that needed to be in Knoxville by 8 a.m. the next morning. The regular route through I-40 was completely shut down due to a chemical spill, and the detour would add 4 hours I didn't have. My dispatcher, Frank, suggested an alternative. Old Route 19 through the Appalachian backroads. It's gonna be rough, Frank warned over the phone. No truck stops, barely any cell service, and the roads in shit condition. But it'll save you 3 hours if you can handle it. I'd driven worse. I told him I'd take it. The sun was setting as I merged off the interstate and onto the state highway that would take me into the mountains. Within 30 minutes, civilization disappeared behind me. The road narrowed from 4 lanes to 2, then to barely wide enough for 2 vehicles to pass. Trees closed in on both sides, thick, ancient forest that swallowed the last of the daylight. By 9 p.m., I was deep in the mountains, navigating switchbacks and steep grades that made my transmission work overtime. The road was exactly as Frank described. Cracked asphalt, faded lane markers, and warning signs so rusted they were barely readable. But it was empty, completely empty. I hadn't seen another vehicle for over an hour. Around 3 a.m., somewhere between nowhere and nothing, I crested a particularly steep climb and spotted something that made my heart lift a little. Tail lights. Not just one set. Looked like a whole convoy of trucks, maybe 6 or 7 rigs spaced out in a perfect line ahead of me. Finally, I thought, other drivers, people who knew this route. They were maintaining exactly 55 miles per hour, which was smart given the conditions. I hung back a safe distance and settled in, actually grateful for the company. The loneliness of these mountain roads gets to you after a while. Even seeing other trucks in the distance made me feel less isolated. After about 15 minutes, I decided to try making contact. I keyed my CB radio. Breaker, breaker. This is Nighthawk running southbound behind you boys. Anybody on this convoy monitoring channel 19? Static. Pure static. I tried again. Hey! Convoy about a mile ahead of me. Y'all got your ears on? More static. Not even the usual chatter from distant channels bleeding through. Just dead, empty static. That was odd, but not unheard of. We were deep in the mountains. Radio signals did weird things here. Some guys didn't run CBs anymore anyway, preferring their cell phones. Though out here, cells were useless. I kept following, matching their pace. But as the miles rolled by, 10, 20, 30, something started feeling wrong. I couldn't put my finger on it at first. They just kept going, never speeding up, never slowing down, navigating the hairpin curves with perfect precision. No brake lights, no variation in speed whatsoever. At the 40-minute mark, I started getting seriously uneasy. These weren't normal driving patterns. Professional drivers, sure, we get into rhythms. But this was different. They moved like they were on rails. Like every turn had been programmed into them. I tried the CB again. Convoy ahead. This is Nighthawk. Is anybody reading me? Nothing. I decided to pass them. Maybe get a look at the lead truck, see what company they were running for. I dropped a gear and started accelerating, pulling into the oncoming lane. The road was empty, had been empty for hours, so it was safe enough. I came up on the last truck in the line. A Peterbilt, older model, probably 90s vintage. As I pulled alongside, I glanced over to give the driver a friendly wave. The cab was empty. Not just empty, abandoned. No driver. No passenger. The steering wheel was turning by itself, navigating the curves perfectly as the truck rolled forward at exactly 55 miles per hour. I could see into the cab clearly. The dome light was on, illuminating the interior. The driver's seat was worn and cracked, and there was an old air freshener hanging from the mirror. But no person, no one at the controls. My blood went cold. I must have seen it wrong, I told myself. Shadow. Angle. Something. I accelerated harder and pulled up to the next truck. Empty. The one after that. Empty. And the next. Empty. All 7 trucks, every single one, were driving themselves through the Appalachian Mountains at 3 a.m. Perfect formation, perfect speed, perfect navigation. No drivers. The steering wheels turned on their own. The transmissions shifted smoothly through curves. But there was no one inside. I fell back, my heart hammering. This wasn't possible. Autonomous trucks existed, sure, but not old rigs from the 90s. Not in commercial operation on abandoned mountain roads in the middle of nowhere. And definitely not moving in perfect convoy formation like they were being controlled by something. I should have turned around. Should have gotten the hell off that mountain. But I kept following, mesmerized and terrified in equal measure. The logical part of my brain kept trying to rationalize it. Maybe they were doing some kind of test. Maybe there were drivers ducked down, hidden from view. Maybe I was hallucinating from exhaustion. But I knew what I'd seen. Those cabs were empty. We drove for another 20 minutes, and then, all at once, without warning, the convoy's brake lights flared. They slowed in perfect unison and turned right onto a side road I hadn't even noticed. I slammed on my brakes and stopped, watching them disappear into the tree line. I pulled up my GPS, zooming in on our location. According to the map, there was no road there. No intersection. No turn-off. Just solid forest. But I just watched 7 trucks turn onto it, their tail lights receding into the darkness between the trees. I sat there for 5 minutes, hands gripping the wheel, trying to decide what to do. Finally, I edged forward until I reached the spot where they turned. I pointed my spotlight into the trees. There was a road. Barely. 2 worn ruts in the forest floor, overgrown with weeds and small trees. It looked like it hadn't been used in decades, but I could see fresh tire tracks. Multiple sets, leading into the darkness. A rusted sign was barely visible in the undergrowth. Mountain Freight Depot 3 miles. Below that, in smaller letters, something that made my stomach drop. Established 1952, closed 1987. I didn't follow them. Instead, I got the hell out of there, driving straight through to Knoxville without stopping. Made my delivery with 20 minutes to spare. The next day, I called Frank and told him what I'd seen. He was quiet for a long moment. "You know the story about Route 19? He finally asked. I said I didn't. January 1987. Blizzard came through the mountains, worst in 50 years. A freight convoy, 7 trucks, was trying to make it through before the road closed. They radioed in around midnight, said they were pushing through. That was the last anyone heard. Search and rescue looked for weeks. Found nothing. No trucks, no wreckage, no bodies. Just gone. 7 drivers. 7 full loads. Vanished. I felt something cold crawl down my spine. What were they hauling? Company records showed mixed freight. Construction equipment, retail goods, industrial supplies. Nothing unusual. "Frank," I said slowly, "how many trucks were in that convoy?" 7. "Why?" I closed my eyes. Just wondering. That was 6 months ago. I've driven Route 19 twice since then, both times during daylight. Never saw them again, but other drivers have. I've heard the stories on the CB, late at night when guys are getting tired and talking to stay awake. They always describe the same thing. A convoy of 7 trucks, older models, running perfect formation through the mountains. No response to radio calls. No drivers in the cabs. They appear around 3 a.m. and disappear onto that phantom road. Some guys try to follow them, but the road they turn onto never looks the same twice. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. One driver swears he followed them for a quarter mile before his engine died. He walked back to the main road, and when he looked back, his truck was gone. Found it 3 days later, parked at a rest stop 40 miles away. No explanation. Fuel tank full even though it had been empty. Odometer showed an extra 200 miles. I don't take Route 19 anymore unless I absolutely have to. And when I do, I make sure I'm through those mountains before midnight. Because somewhere in the Appalachians, 7 drivers are still making their delivery. still running their route, still driving through a blizzard that happened 38 years ago. And maybe, just maybe, they're looking for a truck to make it 8. Crossing the Continental Divide at night is something you get used to as a long-haul driver, but it never stops being eerie. The altitude, the isolation, the way your headlights just get swallowed by the darkness. It plays with your head after a while. That's why most of us keep our CB radios on, even if nobody's talking. Just hearing the occasional static burst or distant conversation reminds you that civilization still exists somewhere out there. I was westbound on I-70 through Colorado, hauling a sealed trailer from Kansas City to Salt Lake City. Standard freight run I'd done 100 times. The load was already sealed when I picked it up. Some corporate policy about security and insurance. I'd signed the papers, hooked up the trailer, and hit the road without thinking twice about it. It was 1:15 a.m. when I started the climb toward the Eisenhower Tunnel. Traffic was non-existent. Just me and the mountain and the stars overhead. My CB was set to channel 19, volume low, picking up nothing but the occasional pop of static. That's when her voice came through, crystal clear. No static, no distortion, like she was sitting right next to me. Driver of the blue Freightliner, you need to pull over now. I nearly dropped my coffee. I grabbed the mic, checking my mirrors to see if another truck had pulled up behind me. The road was empty in both directions. Say again? Who is this? Silence. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. Just when I thought I'd imagined it, she spoke again. You're carrying something that doesn't belong to you. My hands tightened on the wheel. I looked at the trailer behind me in the mirror. Sealed. Same as it had been for the last 8 hours. Ma'am, I don't know who you are, but this is a commercial channel. I'm hauling sealed freight with proper documentation. If you're DOT, I can pull over and check your trailer. Her voice was different now. Colder. More urgent. Right side. Third pallet from the front. I felt ice water dump through my veins. How could she know what was in my trailer? How could anyone know? I didn't even know. That's what sealed freight meant. You didn't inspect it. Didn't verify the contents beyond the manifest weight and size specifications. Listen, I don't know what kind of game this is, but check your trailer. Not a request anymore. Command. Almost desperate. I should have ignored it. Should have kept driving, reported a potential security threat to my dispatcher. Let the professionals handle it. But something in her voice got under my skin. That urgency. That fear. There was a pullout ahead. One of those scenic overlook areas that nobody uses at 1 a.m. I signaled, habit, even though there was no one around, and pulled off. The wind was brutal at this elevation, cutting through my jacket as I walked around to the trailer. My flashlight beam bounced off the reflective strips on the container. Everything looked normal. Seals intact, doors secured, no signs of tampering. I checked the seal number against my paperwork. Perfect match. If I broke this seal, I'd have to report it, file an incident report, potentially lose the contract. My company had strict policies about this, but that voice kept echoing in my head. Third pallet from the front, right side. I grabbed my bolt cutters from the toolbox. The seal snapped with a sharp crack that seemed too loud in the mountain silence. I swung open the doors and climbed inside, flashlight sweeping across the stacked pallets. Standard commercial load, shrink-wrapped boxes on wooden pallets. Everything strapped down properly. I counted. Right side, 1 pallet, 2 pallets, 3 pallets from the front. It looked like all the others. Wrapped in industrial plastic, boxes labeled with barcodes and shipping codes. But as I got closer, I noticed something. The shrink wrap on one corner had been retaped. Not obvious unless you were looking for it, but definitely redone. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my pocket knife and cut through the plastic. The top boxes were legitimate. I could see through the clear plastic sides. Electronic components looked like tablet computers or something similar. Exactly what the manifest said. But underneath, one box was different. Heavier. Wrapped in duct tape instead of regular packing tape. I pulled it out and set it on the trailer floor. Cut through the tape. Inside were photographs. Hundreds of them. Polaroids, that old instant film type that nobody uses anymore. I spread them out with my flashlight beam moving across them. Every single photograph showed a truck driver sleeping in their cab. Different people, different trucks, different locations, but all taken from outside the driver's side window, looking in. Some were taken from ground level, like someone had been standing right next to the door. Others from higher up, like they'd been on a ladder. The images were disturbing enough. But what made my stomach turn was the detail. These weren't random snapshots. They were carefully composed, perfectly focused. The photographer had taken their time, had stood outside these trucks, watching these drivers sleep, probably for several minutes each. I kept sorting through them, hands trembling. Different seasons, different times, some in daylight, most at night. Rest stops, truck stops, way stations, roadside pullouts. The photographer had been following truckers for a long time. Years, probably. Then I found the ones at the bottom of the box. Recent photos. Higher quality paper. Better color saturation. The photographer had upgraded their camera. I recognized one of the locations. A Flying J truck stop outside of Denver. I'd been there last week. The next photo made my blood stop. It was me, sleeping in my cab. The picture was taken from just outside my window, my face clearly visible in the sleeper berth. The angle, the focus, everything was perfect. Someone had stood right there, inches from my door, and photographed me while I slept. The timestamp in the corner, 6 days ago. I grabbed the photo and stumbled backward, hitting the trailer wall. My flashlight swung wildly, and that's when I saw it. The most recent photo, still lying in the box. It was my truck. This truck, parked in this exact overlook. Taken from behind, showing the trailer doors open and a figure inside with a flashlight. Taken tonight, maybe 5 minutes ago. I ran, sprinted out of that trailer, slammed the doors shut, and dove into my cab. My fingers fumbled with the locks as I scanned the darkness outside. The overlook was empty. No other vehicles. No movement in the shadows beyond my headlight range. I grabbed my CB mic with shaking hands. Breaker breaker. This is Nighthawk on I-70 westbound. Emergency traffic. Does anyone copy? Static. This is an emergency. Any unit on this channel, please respond. More static. Then that voice again. The woman. You shouldn't have looked. Who are you? I screamed into the mic. You shouldn't have looked? She repeated, her voice still calm, still cold. Now you're part of the collection. I threw the mic down and grabbed my phone. No signal. Not unusual at this elevation, but the timing was too perfect. My CB crackled again. But it wasn't the woman this time. It was other voices. Dozens of them. Overlapping. All saying the same thing. He looked. He looked. He looked. He looked. I started the engine and floored it, leaving the overlook in a spray of gravel. In my mirror, I saw something. A figure standing at the edge of the pullout watching me go. Too far away to make out details, but I could see the glint of something in their hands. Camera. I drove straight through to Salt Lake City without stopping. Dropped the trailer at the depot and filed an incident report about the broken seal. Told them I'd seen the rewrapped pallet and investigated. Didn't mention the photos. Didn't mention the voice on the radio. The next morning, I got a call from my dispatcher. The shipping company had inspected the load. Everything was accounted for according to the manifest. They found no evidence of tampering, no unauthorized items. The third pallet on the right side contained exactly what it was supposed to, electronic components. There wasn't a box of photographs? I asked. Photographs? No, Mark. Everything checked out. Why? I didn't answer. I just hung up. But I kept the Polaroid. The one of me sleeping in my cab. I keep it in my wallet as a reminder. 2 weeks later, I was at a truck stop in Nevada. Came back from the restaurant to find something tucked under my windshield wiper. Another Polaroid. Me. Sitting in the restaurant. Taken through the window. 15 minutes ago. On the back. Written in careful handwriting. The collection grows. I don't sleep in my truck anymore. I get hotels even though they're expensive. I check over my shoulder constantly. I keep my curtains closed even during the day. Because somewhere out there, someone is still taking photographs. Still building their collection. And I'm in it now. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear that voice on Channel 19. You shouldn't have looked. She was right. Wolf Creek Pass is one of those routes that separates professional drivers from amateurs. Steep grades, hairpin curves, and elevation changes that'll blow your engine if you're not careful. But I'd been running it for 12 years, hauling loads between Durango and Alamosa, and I knew every inch of that mountain. October nights up there get cold fast. I started the climb around 10 p.m. with a load of construction materials, nothing unusual. Clear skies, stars so bright you could navigate by them. Temperature gauge showed 38 degrees at the base. By the time I was halfway up, it had dropped to 29. That's when I drove into the fog. Came out of nowhere. 1 second I had clear visibility for a quarter mile. The next second I was surrounded by white so thick I could barely see 10 feet ahead. My headlights just reflected back at me, turning everything into a disorienting glare. I slowed to 35 miles per hour, turned on my flashers, and settled in for a careful climb. Fog in the mountains isn't unusual. It rolls in, it rolls out. You just take it slow and stay alert. But after about 5 minutes, I realized something was wrong. The fog wasn't dispersing. It wasn't thinning out, and it was moving wrong. I've driven through plenty of fog banks. They're usually pretty uniform, thick or thin, but consistent. This fog seemed to pulse, to swirl, like it was alive. It wrapped around my truck in tendrils, coiling around the mirrors and windows. And here's what really got me. The road ahead stayed clear. Not completely clear, but just enough for me to see the white line and the guardrail. Like the fog was deliberately keeping a corridor open just wide enough for my truck. I tried slowing down. The fog pressed closer, closing in on both sides until I could barely see anything. I sped back up to 45 miles per hour. The corridor widened slightly, giving me just enough visibility. It was hurting me, controlling my speed. After about 20 minutes of this, my CB radio started going crazy. Not voices, just static. But it had rhythm to it. Pulses that almost sounded like words, like someone trying to communicate through heavy interference. I turned the volume down, my hands tight on the wheel. Focus on the road. Just get through this. Fog doesn't last forever. That's when I saw the first figure. It was on my left, moving alongside the truck. Human-shaped, but wrong. The proportions weren't right, too tall, limbs too long. It was keeping perfect pace with my truck, matching my speed exactly, moving with this jerky, stop-motion quality like a film with missing frames. I told myself it was just a shadow, just the fog playing tricks with the light. But then I saw another one on the right side. Same size, same unnatural movement. Walking, if you could call it that, right alongside my truck at 45 miles per hour. My breath was coming in short gasps. I gripped the wheel so hard my knuckles went white. Don't look at them. Eyes forward. Just drive. But I could see them in my peripheral vision. More of them now. 4, 5, 6 figures moving through the fog, all keeping perfect pace with the truck. They looked like they were struggling, fighting against invisible resistance with every step, but they never fell behind. The CB static got louder, and through it I started to hear voices. Multiple voices, overlapping, distorted. Stop the truck. Stop the truck. Stop the truck. I'm not stopping, I said out loud, though I don't know why. Maybe just to hear my own voice, to confirm I was still real, still here. The fog pressed closer. The figures moved in tighter, closer to the truck. I could see them more clearly now through the driver's side window. They were wearing clothes or what had been clothes, tattered, rotting. One of them turned its head toward me. No face, just a blank, smooth surface where a face should have been. I screamed and jerked the wheel, nearly hitting the guardrail. The truck fishtailed, and for a horrible second I thought I was going over the edge. But I managed to straighten out, heart hammering, sweat pouring down my face despite the cold. The CB voices were screaming now, dozens of them, all demanding I stop. The static was so loud it hurt my ears. I reached over and ripped the power cord out of the socket. The voices didn't stop. They were coming from outside the truck now. All around me, pounding on the trailer, scraping along the sides. The figures were trying to climb onto my truck. I don't know how long I drove like that. The clock said 40 minutes, then an hour, then 90 minutes. But Wolf Creek Pass should only take about 45 minutes from bottom to top, even going slow. I was trapped in the fog, driving a road that should have ended but kept going. The figures outside were getting more aggressive. I could feel the truck rocking as they climbed on it. Something heavy landed on the roof of the cab with a solid thump. Scratching sounds, right above my head, like fingernails on metal. The speedometer showed 45 miles per hour, but I felt like I was barely moving. The white line beneath me seemed to repeat, the same section of road over and over. I passed the same mile marker 3 times. Then, as suddenly as I'd entered it, I broke through. The fog just ended, like I'd driven through a wall. 1 second I was surrounded by white and those terrible figures. The next I was in clear air under stars. I could see the lights of Alamosa in the valley below, maybe 5 miles ahead. I didn't slow down. I didn't pull over. I kept my foot on the accelerator until I reached the bottom of the pass and drove straight into a 24-hour truck stop. Parked under the brightest lights I could find and sat there shaking for 20 minutes. When I finally got out to check the truck, I expected to see scratches, dents, some evidence of what had happened. The trailer was clean. No marks, no damage, nothing. But on the roof of the cab, I found something that made my blood run cold. Handprints, dozens of them, pressed into the metal like it was clay. But they weren't normal handprints. Too many fingers, too long, and they were frozen there, rimmed with frost even though it was 45 degrees out. I took photos with my phone before they melted. Sent them to my dispatcher with a message. I'm not taking Wolf Creek Pass at night anymore. Find someone else. He called me an hour later. Mark, I don't know what to say. We've had 3 other drivers report similar experiences on that pass over the last 5 years. Fog that doesn't act right. Voices on the CB. One guy swears he drove for 4 hours on a 40-minute stretch of road. What happened to them? 2 of them quit. Wouldn't drive mountains anymore. The 3rd guy insisted on going back. Said he wanted to document it. And, long pause, he's missing. Disappeared on Wolf Creek Pass 2 years ago. They found his truck parked on the shoulder. Engine running. No sign of the driver. The weird thing was his electronic logs. They showed he'd been parked there for 6 hours. But his last check-in with dispatch was only 20 minutes before they found the truck. Did they find anything else? Yeah. Handprints. All over the cab. Same as what you're describing. Too many fingers. I hung up and looked at the photos on my phone one more time before deleting them. Some things aren't meant to be documented. Some things are better left forgotten. But I can't forget. Every time I see fog now, even in broad daylight, I feel my chest tighten. I hear that scratching on the roof. I see those blank faces pressed against my window. 3 weeks ago, I got a new route assignment. Durango to Alamosa. The dispatcher swore they'd give me the northern route, around the pass, no mountains at night. But when I checked the GPS coordinates, the route went straight through Wolf Creek Pass. Departure time, 10 p.m. I quit the next day, because somewhere on that mountain, in the fog that shouldn't exist, they're still waiting. Still walking alongside trucks that pass through at night. Still demanding you stop. And I've seen what happens to drivers who stop. The handprints tell me everything I need to know. Highway 285 between Denver and Fairplay is one of those routes where the rest stops are spaced far enough apart that you learn to use every one. The facilities aren't great, but they're better than nothing when you've been driving for 8 hours and your bladder is screaming. I'd used the Red Hill Pass rest area dozens of times. Standard setup. Parking for maybe 30 trucks, a brick building with restrooms, some picnic tables, and informational signs about local wildlife that nobody ever reads. Nothing special, but it served its purpose. But when I pulled in at 2:30 a.m. on a Tuesday in November, something was immediately wrong. Every parking spot was full. I counted at least 28 trucks, maybe 30, all backed into their spaces in perfect formation. Older models mostly, Freightliners, Peterbilts, Kenworths from the early 2000s. All perfectly spaced, all perfectly still. No idling engines. That was the first thing that hit me. You get 30 trucks parked anywhere, especially overnight, you've got at least half of them idling to keep the cab warm or run the sleeper unit. But I couldn't hear a single engine running. Just dead silence and my own diesel rumbling. No lights in any of the cabs either. No dome lights, no flashlights, no glow from phones or tablets. Just dark silhouettes against the darker mountain backdrop. I found a spot at the very end of the lot, as far from the building as you could get. I killed my engine and sat there for a moment, listening to the tick of cooling metal. Where was everyone? Maybe inside, I figured. Maybe there was some kind of driver meeting I didn't know about, or the coffee was actually decent and everyone was taking advantage. I'd seen weird things on the road before. This probably had a simple explanation. I grabbed my flashlight and started walking toward the facilities. The building was about 70 yards from where I'd parked. As I walked past the other trucks, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I glanced in a few of the cabs as I passed. Too dark to see anything clearly, but they all appeared empty. The bathroom door was propped open with a rock. Fluorescent lights hummed inside, that harsh institutional lighting that always gives me a headache. I pushed through and stopped just inside the entrance. All the stalls were occupied. I could see feet under every door. Work boots mostly, a few sneakers. 6 stalls, 6 pairs of feet. But nobody was making a sound. No rustling, no flushing, no coughing or shuffling. Just silence. "Hey!" I called out. "Everybody okay in here?" Nothing. I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. If someone's sick or needs help, say something. Absolute silence. But those feet didn't move. Didn't shift. Just there. I backed toward the door and noticed the sinks. All 6 of them were running. Full blast. Water pouring over the edges, flooding the floor. The drains couldn't keep up. Water was pooling across the tile, soaking into the grout. I reached over and tried to turn off the closest faucet. It wouldn't budge. Stuck in the full-on position, scalding hot water pouring out. "What the hell?" I muttered, trying another sink. Same thing. All of them stuck, all running hot enough to steam. I got out of there fast, my shoes squelching on the flooded floor. The cold mountain air hit me like a slap, but I barely noticed. My mind was racing. Something was very wrong here, but I couldn't put my finger on exactly what. I pulled out my phone to call 911. No signal. Not even one bar. I was in a dead zone. Okay, I thought. Get back to the truck. Drive down the mountain until you have signal. Report this. Let the police figure it out. But as I walked back through the parking lot, I started looking more carefully at the other trucks. Really looking. The first one I passed, an older Freightliner with Montana plates, had someone in it. I could see the silhouette slumped over the steering wheel, head resting on folded arms. Sleeping, maybe, or I tapped on the window. "Hey, you all right?" No response. No movement. I tried the door handle. Locked. I moved to the next truck. Same thing. Driver slumped over the wheel, motionless. Next truck. Same. And the next. Every single truck I checked had a driver inside, all in the same position. All completely still. My heart was hammering now. This wasn't right. This was very, very wrong. I ran to my truck, fumbling with my keys. I had to get out of here. Had to get help. Whatever was happening here, I wanted no part of it. I jammed the key into the ignition and turned it. Nothing. Not even a click. The dashboard didn't light up. No power at all. "No, no, 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 no," I chanted, trying again. Dead. Completely dead. I checked the battery connections, tight and clean. I checked the fuses. Everything looked fine. But the truck was as dead as if someone had drained every amp of electricity from it. I grabbed my flashlight and my tire iron, the closest thing I had to a weapon, and got out. I'd have to walk. Maybe flag down a passing car on the highway, get them to call for help. That's when I heard it. Engines starting. All around me. Every truck in that lot fired up simultaneously. 30 engines roaring to life in perfect synchronization. Headlights flooding on, illuminating the parking lot like a prison yard. And in each truck, silhouetted against those headlights, I could see the drivers, still slumped over their wheels, still not moving, but the trucks were running. I ran. Didn't think, didn't plan, just ran toward the highway. My lungs burned in the thin mountain air, my legs pumped, and behind me I could hear those engines revving, all in sync, like some kind of terrible mechanical choir. I was maybe 50 yards from the highway when I heard the air brakes releasing. All of them, at once. I looked back. The trucks were moving, not pulling out one by one like normal traffic. All of them simultaneously, backing out of their spaces in perfect unison. Then they stopped, shifted gears, and started rolling forward. Toward me, I sprinted for the highway, my flashlight beam bouncing wildly. I could see headlights from a car approaching. Finally, help, someone who could. The car didn't slow down. Didn't even seem to see me waving frantically on the side of the road. It just blew past, doing at least 70, leaving me in the dark with those trucks advancing behind me. I dove into the ditch on the side of the highway, rolling through dead grass and rocks, and scrambled up the opposite embankment. My hands were bleeding, my jacket torn, but I didn't stop until I was 100 yards from the rest stop, hidden behind a cluster of pine trees. I watched those trucks roll slowly through the parking lot, searching. Their headlights swept methodically across every space, every shadow. After what felt like an eternity but was probably only 5 minutes, they all backed into their original spots. The engines shut off, all at once, all perfectly synchronized. Darkness and silence returned. I waited until sunrise, shivering in my hiding spot. When the first light of dawn started touching the mountains, I crept back to the rest stop. It was empty, every parking spot vacant. No trucks, no cars, nothing. The building was dark, the bathroom door closed and locked. I tried it, wouldn't budge. A sign on the door read, "Facility closed for winter season." But I'd been in there 6 hours ago. The lights were on. The water was running. My truck was where I'd left it, keys still in the ignition. I turned them with shaking hands. The engine started immediately. I got the hell out of there and didn't stop until I reached Colorado Springs. Went straight to a truck stop, bought the biggest coffee they had, and sat in the restaurant until the shaking stopped. I told the story to another driver, an old-timer who'd been running these mountains for 30 years. He nodded slowly. "Red Hill Pass rest stop, right?" "Yeah." "How did you?" "You're not the first. That rest stop's been closed every winter since 2006. Something about structural issues. But every few years, a driver reports seeing it open. Full parking lot. Trucks everywhere. Nobody can explain it." "What about the drivers? The ones slumped over their wheels?" His face went pale. "There was an accident. Winter of 2005. Carbon monoxide leak in the building's heating system. 15 truckers died in their sleep. They were all parked there overnight, idling their trucks to stay warm. The CO built up in the cab while they slept. By morning, all dead. My coffee cup clattered on the table. 15 they found. But the investigators said there were signs more trucks had been there. Tire tracks, empty spots with fuel stains. They think maybe a dozen more drivers managed to wake up and drive off before they died. Some of them were probably found miles down the road. Others," he shrugged, "others are still out there somewhere, still trying to make their delivery." I never went back to Highway 285. Found new routes, took the long way around, added hours to my schedule. I don't care, because sometimes, late at night when I'm at a rest stop, I'll see a truck pull in. Older model, driver looking tired, and they'll park and turn off their engine and settle in for the night. And I'll wonder, are they real? Or are they still trying to wake up from a sleep they'll never escape? I don't ask anymore. I just keep driving. Old Route 666 through New Mexico got renumbered to Route 491 back in 2003. But the old mile markers are still out there if you know where to look. The state never bothered removing them all, too expensive, too remote, and honestly most people don't even use that road anymore since they built the new highway. But when you're running behind schedule and need to shave 40 minutes off your route, you take the old roads. That's what I told myself as I turned onto the cracked asphalt just before midnight. The new highway had been shut down due to an overturned fuel tanker, and dispatch told me to use any available alternate route. Route 491 was that route. The road was worse than I remembered. Potholes, faded lines, and a darkness that seemed to press in from all sides. My headlights barely pushed back the night, and the mountains rose up on either side like walls. The Sangre de Cristo Range. Blood of Christ in Spanish. Appropriate name, given what I was about to see. I'd been driving for about an hour when my clock clicked over to 3:33 a.m. I've heard other drivers talk about that time, how weird things happen at 3:33, especially on deserted roads. I'd always written it off as superstition. But when you're alone on a mountain road in the dead of night, those superstitions start feeling more real. That's when my headlights caught the old mile marker, 666. They'd left this one standing, even after the renumbering. Probably couldn't get equipment out this far, or maybe they just forgot. The numbers were rusted but still clearly visible. And standing right next to it was a little boy. He couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old, wearing light blue pajamas with cartoon characters on them. No jacket, no shoes, just pajamas in the middle of winter on a mountain road where the temperature was probably in the low 20s. He was facing the rock wall, his back to the road, standing perfectly still. I should have kept driving. Every rational thought in my head screamed at me to keep going. But I've got kids. I've got a son about that age. And the image of a child standing alone on a freezing mountain road at 3:33 a.m. I couldn't just leave him there. I pulled over, put on my flashers, and grabbed a blanket from my sleeper berth. "Hey!" I called out through the open window. "Kid, you okay?" He didn't move, didn't turn around, just stood there facing that rock wall like it was the most interesting thing in the world. I got out of the truck, my breath fogging in the cold air. "Hey buddy, where's your parents? You're gonna freeze out here." Still nothing. I walked closer, my boots crunching on gravel. "Can you hear me?" I was about 10 feet away when he started to turn. Not his body, just his head. It rotated slowly, impossibly, a full 180 degrees, until he was looking at me while still facing the wall. His eyes were completely black. No whites, no pupils, just solid black orbs that reflected my flashlight beam like polished obsidian. I stumbled backward, my breath catching in my throat. The child's mouth opened in a smile, and I saw his teeth. They'd been filed to points. Every single one. Dozens of tiny white daggers in that too-wide smile. "My parents are waiting," he said. His voice sounded like metal scraping on metal, like grinding gears in a dying transmission. "Waiting for you." He raised one arm, bent at angles that arms shouldn't bend, and pointed up the mountain. Not at the road. Up the sheer rock face, toward the peak hidden in darkness. I followed his gesture with my flashlight, the beam shaking in my trembling hand. There were lights up there, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, arranged in a perfect circle around something I couldn't quite make out. They flickered and moved like candles, but they were too far up, too high for anyone to have carried them. The lights pulsed in rhythm, all together, like a heartbeat. "What?" My voice cracked. "What is that?" "They're waiting," the boy repeated. His head rotated back to face forward, that terrible grinding sound accompanying the movement. "All of them, waiting for you to join." I took another step back. "Join what?" He didn't answer, just stood there, that pointed-toothed smile still fixed on his face, his head now facing the correct direction, but his eyes stayed locked on me, didn't move from their sockets, but somehow tracked me as I retreated. "I'm leaving," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm going back to my truck now." "You should look closer," the boy said, "at what's waiting. They want you to see." Despite every instinct telling me not to, I raised my flashlight again and aimed it at those lights on the mountain. This time I let my eyes adjust, really looked at what I was seeing. The lights weren't candles. They were eyes. Hundreds of glowing eyes, all staring down at the road. At me. and in the center of the circle, something massive moved. Something that blocked out stars as it shifted its impossible bulk. I ran, sprinted back to my truck, threw myself into the cab, slammed the door and locked it. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely get the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life. I threw it in gear and started rolling, checking my mirrors to make sure the boy wasn't following. He stood in the same spot, still smiling, still pointing up at the mountain. As I pulled away, I saw him wave. A slow, mechanical gesture, like a doll on a string. But then I saw something that made my blood turn to ice water. There were footprints leading away from where the boy had been standing. Small footprints, child-sized, made with bare feet, and they led directly to my truck. I could see them clearly in my headlights, wet, dark prints on the pavement. They went right up to my driver's side door. And they didn't stop there. They went inside. The prints continued across my door sill, onto my floor mat. Small, wet footprints. I could smell them now, that odor of standing water, of stagnant ponds, of things that had been dead and rotting for a long time. I grabbed my flashlight and swept it across the cab. The footprints led from my door to the passenger seat, then to the sleeper berth. Then they stopped, right at my bed. There was a wet outline on my pillow, like someone small had been lying there, waiting. I drove with all the windows down despite the freezing temperature, blasting the heater, the radio on full volume. Anything to push back the silence, to avoid thinking about what might still be in the truck with me. I didn't stop until I hit Albuquerque 90 miles later. Pulled into the first truck wash I could find and paid them to clean the interior. Strip everything. Shampoo the carpets, disinfect the sleeper, burn the old bedding if they had to. The manager looked at the wet footprints and the stain on the bed and asked if I'd had an accident. Something like that, I said. He called me 4 hours later. Hey, we couldn't get the smell out. Tried everything, enzyme cleaners, ozone treatment, even brought in a restoration company that does flood damage. Whatever got in your truck, the smell isn't coming out. And there's something else. What? The footprints. They don't end at the bed. They continue. Up the walls. Across the ceiling. Down the other side. Like whatever made them was walking on the ceiling. And the prints, they're not water. Lab guy we consulted says it's groundwater. The kind you find deep underground. In caves. Or in graves. I sold the truck the next week. Took a massive loss on it, but I didn't care. Bought a new one, different model, different color. But I kept something from the old truck. A photo I'd taken with my phone before the cleaning crew arrived. Clear image of those small, wet footprints leading up the wall. I keep it as a reminder. 2 months later, I heard from another driver about Route 491. He'd been driving it late at night and saw a kid on the side of the road, wearing pajamas, standing at an old mile marker. Did you stop? I asked. Almost did, he said. But something told me not to. The kid turned his head to look at me, and I swear to God, his head went all the way around. I floored it and didn't look back. Good, I said, because if you'd stopped, you wouldn't be here telling me about it. He looked at me funny. What do you mean? I pulled out my phone and showed him the photo. The footprints. The wet outline on the bed. Whatever that thing is, it's not a kid. And it's not waiting by the road to get help. It's waiting for someone to invite it in. Because once you do, once you acknowledge it and bring it into your space, it doesn't leave. He went pale. Is it still in your truck? Not my truck anymore, I said. But it's in someone's truck. I sold it to a used dealer in Texas. They probably sold it to another driver by now. Jesus Christ. Yeah. I don't drive Route 491 anymore. Don't drive any road that has old mile markers from the 666 days. And if I ever see a kid standing alone on a road at night, I don't stop. Because the thing pretending to be that child is still out there. Still waiting at mile marker 666 in its little blue pajamas. Still inviting drivers to look up at what's waiting on the mountain. And still leaving wet footprints in trucks that lead from the door to the bed. I burned my old bedding. But sometimes, late at night, I still smell that stagnant water smell. And I wonder if getting rid of the truck was enough. or if something followed me anyway. The sign appeared in my headlights like a beacon of hope. Last chance fuel and food 2 miles. I'd been pushing through the San Juan Mountains on fumes, literally and figuratively. My fuel gauge had been screaming at me for the last 30 miles, and I was running on 4 hours of sleep over the past 2 days. Highway 550, the $1 million highway they call it, though right now it felt more like the highway to hell. Narrow, winding, with drops so steep on one side that guardrails seemed more like suggestions than safety features. And at 1:30 a.m. in late November, there wasn't another soul on this road. The truck stop materialized exactly where the sign promised. It was an old-style setup, single-story building with a classic diner attached, old-fashioned gas pumps under fluorescent lights, and a gravel parking lot that could fit maybe 20 trucks. The neon sign flickered, open 24 hours. Thank God. I pulled in and immediately noticed the place was packed. Every parking spot had a truck in it, older models, mostly 90s and early 2000s rigs with faded paint and road grime. At least 15 trucks, all backed in neatly. The diner looked full too. I could see through the big windows that every booth was occupied. Busy place for the middle of nowhere, I thought. But mountain truck stops could be like that. The only option for 100 miles means everyone uses them. I found a spot at the far end of the lot and killed my engine. The sudden silence was almost painful after hours of road noise. I sat for a moment, gathering myself, then headed toward the diner. My stomach was growling, and the thought of hot coffee was almost religious. The building had that timeless truck stop look, weathered with siding, a screen door that creaked, and windows that needed cleaning. But it was well lit, and through the glass I could see drivers sitting in the booths, eating and drinking. I pushed through the door. The interior was exactly what you'd expect. Checkerboard floor, red vinyl booths, a long counter with swivel stools, and that permanent smell of coffee and grease. A jukebox sat silent in the corner. Behind the counter, a pass-through window showed the kitchen. Every booth was full, just like I'd seen from outside. Drivers sat hunched over plates of food, eating quietly. Very quietly. Nobody was talking. No conversation, no laughter, not even the usual trucker complaints about dispatchers or traffic. Just the sound of silverware on plates. A waitress appeared from the kitchen, older woman, maybe 60, with her gray hair pulled back in a bun. She wore a classic pink uniform with a name tag that said, Dolores. Her smile was pleasant but somehow didn't reach her eyes. "Sit anywhere, honey," she said, her voice warm and grandmotherly. "We'll get you taken care of." I slid into a booth near the door, keeping my jacket on. The seat was cracked vinyl, patched with duct tape, but it felt good to sit on something that wasn't moving. I glanced around at the other diners. They were all eating the same thing. Every single driver. Burgers and fries, all assembled identically. Lettuce, tomato, pickle on the side. The burgers were cooked exactly the same way, same level of char, same thickness. Like they'd all come off an assembly line. And they were eating in perfect synchronization. I watched, fascinated and disturbed, as every driver in the room took a bite at exactly the same moment, chewed the same number of times, swallowed, paused, then took another bite, all together like a choreographed performance. None of them looked at each other. None of them looked at me. They just stared straight ahead at nothing, mechanically eating their identical meals. Dolores appeared at my elbow with a coffee pot. "What'll you have, honey?" I tore my eyes away from the synchronized eating. Just coffee and a burger, I guess. Medium rare, if that's." "We cook them all the same way here," she interrupted, still smiling that empty smile. "You'll like it. Everyone does." She poured my coffee without waiting for a response and headed back to the kitchen. I heard her call through the pass-through. "One more for the count." Strange way to put it. The coffee arrived almost instantly, followed less than 2 minutes later by my burger. That was fast. Too fast for a fresh-cooked burger. But I was hungry enough not to care. I picked it up and took a bite. Tasted wrong. Not spoiled exactly. Just off. There was a metallic tang underneath the beef flavor, like the meat had been sitting in a rusty pan. And it was cold in the center, despite being seared on the outside. I set it down and took a sip of coffee to wash away the taste. The coffee was worse. That same metallic flavor, stronger now, coating my tongue. I looked at my burger more carefully. The meat was grayish in the center, and the juices pooling on the plate had an odd, dark color. Not blood, something else. That's when I noticed the other drivers had all stopped eating. Simultaneously, they'd finished their meals at exactly the same moment and now sat with their hands folded on the tables, staring straight ahead with glazed, unfocused eyes. "Everything okay, honey?" Dolores was back, her smile still fixed in place. "Actually, I'm not that hungry after all. How much do I owe you?" "You didn't finish." Her smile dropped. Not gradually, it just vanished, like a switch had been flipped. "We don't waste food here." "I'm sorry, Every driver in the diner turned to look at me, all at once, all with the same mechanical movement, heads swiveling in perfect unison. Their eyes were glazed and empty, like doll's eyes, like they weren't really seeing me but looking through me. "We don't waste food here," Dolores repeated, her voice flat now, emotionless. I stood up fast, knocking my coffee cup over. Brown liquid spread across the table, and I saw it clearly now. It wasn't coffee. Too thick, too dark, and floating in it were small pieces of something. I didn't want to know what. "I'm leaving," I said, backing toward the door. All the drivers stood up. Together. Same movement, same timing, chairs scraping in unison. They didn't say anything, didn't make any threatening gestures. Just stood there, blocking the aisles, those empty eyes fixed on me. Dolores walked out from behind the counter. "You haven't paid, and you haven't finished your meal. Keep the change." I threw a $20 bill on the table and bolted for the door. I hit the screen door at a run and stumbled out into the parking lot. The cold air hit me like a slap, but I didn't stop. I ran for my truck, fumbling with my keys. Behind me, I heard the diner door open. Then footsteps, lots of them. Slow, shuffling footsteps on gravel. I got my door open and threw myself inside, slamming it shut and hitting the lock. My hands were shaking as I jammed the key into the ignition. The engine turned over once, twice, coughed. "No, no, no, come on." I cranked it again. Caught. The engine roared to life, and I threw it in gear without even checking my mirrors. As I pulled out, I looked back at the diner. Every person who'd been inside was now standing outside. 15, maybe 20 drivers, all standing in a line in front of the building, watching me leave. Dolores stood in the center, her arms crossed. None of them moved. They just watched, those empty eyes tracking my truck as I accelerated out of the parking lot and back onto the highway. I drove for 3 hours straight without stopping, until I reached Durango and pulled into a well-lit, modern truck stop with dozens of other trucks and lots of people moving around normally. I went inside, bought the biggest coffee they had, and sat in a booth shaking. An older driver at the next table noticed. "You all right, son?" I told him what happened. The weird truck stop, the synchronized eating, the metallic taste in the food. His face went pale. "What was the name of the place?" "Last Chance Fuel and Food. Highway 550. About." "Jesus Christ." He cut me off. "That place burned down in 1979. Gas leak explosion. Killed everyone inside. 15 drivers, the owner, 2 waitresses. They never rebuilt it. The foundation's still there, but the building's gone." I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and showed him my GPS history. "I was there 2 hours ago. I have the coordinates." He looked at the screen, then at me. "That's the right location, but there's no building there. Just an empty lot and some concrete ruins." "I was inside," I insisted. "I sat in a booth. I ordered food. There were other drivers." "What did the waitress look like?" I described Dolores, gray hair, pink uniform, name tag. He went even paler. "Dolores Murphy. She was one of the waitresses who died. My dad knew." I was running 3 hours behind schedule, and my dispatcher was already riding my ass about the delivery window. The load was time-sensitive, pharmaceutical supplies that needed to reach a hospital in Grand Junction by 6 a.m. It was already 11:30 p.m., and I was still crawling through the Sawatch Range in central Colorado. The main highway was backed up due to an accident. Some tourist in an RV had jackknifed it across 2 lanes, and the cleanup was going to take hours. My GPS kept recalculating, trying to find an alternate route, but everything added at least 90 minutes to my trip. That's when I saw it. Exit 73, Mountain View Road. It wasn't on my GPS. The electronic map showed solid highway with no exit for another 40 miles. But there it was, clear as day. A green highway sign illuminated in my headlights, showing an exit ramp curving off to the right. I'd driven this route a dozen times and never noticed this exit before. But mountain highways are full of old service roads and forgotten routes. Maybe it was a shortcut the locals used. Maybe my GPS was just out of date. I was desperate enough to try anything. I signaled, force of habit, even though there wasn't another car in sight, and took the exit. The ramp curved down and to the right, spiraling beneath the highway overpass. The pavement was older here, cracked and patched, but still drivable. My headlights cut through thick darkness as trees closed in on both sides. Tall pines that seemed to lean over the road, their branches creating a tunnel effect. The road leveled out and continued straight. No signs, no mile markers, just a narrow 2-lane road disappearing into the forest. But it was heading in the right general direction, so I committed to it. After about 10 minutes, I started to get an uneasy feeling. Something about this road felt familiar. The curves, the way the trees lined up, even the spacing of the reflective markers on the shoulder. Like I'd been here before. But that was impossible. I'd just taken this exit for the first time. Then I saw it. Tire tracks in the mud on the shoulder. Fresh tracks. Wide spacing. Commercial truck tires. My tires. I slowed down, my heart rate picking up. I pulled over and got out with my flashlight, examining the tracks more closely. They were definitely from a truck my size, dual rear axles, same tread pattern as my Michelin tires. And they were fresh. Very fresh. But I hadn't pulled over since taking the exit. These tracks shouldn't exist. Unless I'd already driven past this spot. I got back in the truck, a cold knot forming in my stomach. I checked my odometer, 186,432 miles. I made a mental note of it and kept driving, watching the road more carefully now. The curves did look familiar. That leaning pine tree on the left, that boulder on the right, the way the road dipped and then climbed. I'd seen all of this before. 15 minutes later, I saw the tire tracks again. Same spot, same shoulder. But now there were 2 sets, overlapping, both fresh. I'd driven this loop twice. I stopped the truck and checked my odometer. 186,449 miles. I'd driven 17 miles since I last checked. But I'd only been on this road for 25 minutes total, and I couldn't have covered more than maybe 8 or 9 miles based on the curves and my speed. The math didn't work. I pulled out my phone. No signal, not even emergency service. My GPS showed nothing but blank space. According to the satellite view, I was in the middle of solid forest with no roads anywhere near me. But I was clearly on a road. A paved road, with lane markings and everything. I tried to back up, thinking I could reverse my way out of this. But when I put the truck in reverse and looked in my mirrors, the road behind me stretched into impossible darkness. My reverse lights couldn't penetrate it. The beams just seemed to get swallowed by the black. Forward was the only option. I drove faster this time, pushing 50 miles per hour on the curves, trying to find the end of this road. Any intersection, any turnoff, anything that would let me get out of this loop. But I knew, even before I saw them, that I'd see the tire tracks again. And I did. Same spot, same shoulder. But now there were dozens of them. Layer upon layer of tracks. So many that the mud was churned into deep ruts. I'd driven this loop dozens of times. But I'd only been on this road for 45 minutes. I checked my odometer, 186,467 miles. I'd driven 35 miles. On a loop that felt like maybe 10 miles at most. My fuel gauge was dropping too. I'd been at 3/4 of a tank when I took exit 73. Now I was down to half. I'd burned through a quarter tank in less than an hour, driving what should have been maybe 20 or 30 miles total. The truck was moving, burning fuel, racking up miles. But I wasn't getting anywhere. I was trapped in some kind of spatial loop, driving the same section of road over and over while my odometer spun and my fuel drained. I tried stopping completely, turned off the engine and sat in the dark, listening to my own breathing and the tick of cooling metal. Maybe if I waited, the loop would reset. Maybe I could break the cycle by not moving. After 10 minutes of sitting there, I turned the key and checked my odometer. 186,489 miles. 22 miles had been added while I was sitting still. Panic was setting in now. Full, chest-tightening, breath-catching panic. I was trapped on a road that didn't exist, driving in circles that added impossible miles to my odometer while draining my fuel. And when the fuel ran out, what then? Would I be stuck here forever? I tried everything. I drove with my eyes closed, thinking maybe if I didn't look at the landmarks they wouldn't repeat. Still looped. I tried driving in reverse. The road behind me stretched forever into that impossible darkness. I tried turning off my headlights, nearly hit a tree and gave up on that idea fast. The odometer kept climbing. 186, 520, 186, 574, 186, 631. My fuel gauge dropped past a quarter tank, then to the warning light, then dangerously close to empty. I was going to run out of fuel on a road that didn't exist, and no one would ever find me. My GPS showed me in the middle of a forest. My phone had no signal. By the time anyone realized I was missing, I'd be, what? Still driving? Still trapped in this loop? The tire tracks on the shoulder were a foot deep now. Hundreds of passes. Maybe thousands. I'd lost count, lost track of time. My clock showed 3:47 a.m., but that couldn't be right. I'd only been on this road for an hour, maybe 90 minutes. My fuel gauge hit empty. The low fuel warning chimed. I had maybe 10 miles left before the engine died. And then, just as I was preparing to pull over and accept whatever fate awaited me, the sky started to lighten. Dawn. Impossible, it was too early for dawn. But the eastern sky was definitely getting brighter. The trees on either side of the road started to thin. The darkness wasn't as oppressive. I could see farther ahead now. And then I saw something that made my heart leap. Highway signs. Real highway signs. An intersection. I accelerated toward it, not caring about the curves anymore, just desperate to reach that intersection before it vanished or turned out to be another illusion. The road met a larger highway. I could see the lane markings, the reflectors, the normal features of a regular road. I didn't slow down, just cranked the wheel and merged onto it. Behind me, I glanced in my mirror at the road I just escaped. It was there for a moment, that narrow tunnel of trees, and then it just wasn't, like someone had erased it. The highway behind me was solid, no exit, no side road, nothing. I pulled over at the first wide spot I could find, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the wheel. The sun was rising now, painting the mountains in shades of orange and pink. I checked my phone. 6:23 a.m. I'd been gone for 6 hours and 53 minutes. I checked my odometer. 186,772 miles. 340 miles. In less than 7 hours. On a 10-mile loop. My fuel tank was completely empty. The engine died 30 seconds after I pulled over. I had to call for a fuel delivery, and when the service truck arrived 2 hours later, the driver asked where I'd been driving to burn through an entire tank so fast. I didn't tell him. What could I say? I made my delivery 12 hours late. Lost the contract. Got written up by the company. But I didn't care. I was alive. I was out. But here's what keeps me up at night. I called the Colorado Department of Transportation and asked about Exit 73 on the highway through the Sawatch Range. They have no record of any Exit 73. Never been one. The exit numbers jump from 71 to 75, skipping 73 entirely. Superstition, the clerk told me. Some highways skip certain numbers. Buildings skip the 13th floor. Highways skip unlucky exit numbers. What's unlucky about 73? I asked. Long pause. I don't know. But they've been skipping it since the highway was built in 1967. I've driven that route 4 times since then. Always during daylight. Always with a full tank. And I watch for that exit. Exit 73 to Mountain View Road. I haven't seen it again. But sometimes, late at night, I'll be on a different highway in a different state, and I'll see an exit that's not on my GPS. An exit with an innocent-looking name. A shortcut that promises to save time. And I drive right past it. Because some shortcuts don't have an end. Some shortcuts just loop forever, adding impossible miles while you burn through fuel and time and sanity. And somewhere out there, on a road that doesn't exist, there are other drivers still looping. Still trying to find the exit. Still watching their odometer spin while their fuel gauges drop to empty. I got out. Others aren't so lucky. The fuel stop appeared exactly where I needed it, just as my low fuel warning was starting to chime insistently. I'd been pushing my luck trying to make it through the La Garita Mountains without stopping, but the isolation of Highway 160 meant fuel stops were few and far between. This one was old school. A single island with 2 pumps, a small cinder block building that probably served as both office and store, and a gravel lot big enough for maybe 3 or 4 trucks. A hand-painted wooden sign read Pete's Fuel in faded letters. No corporate logos, no chain branding, just an independent operation hanging on in the middle of nowhere. As I pulled up to the pump, I noticed there were no other vehicles. Not surprising at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday in November, but still, the isolation was profound. The only light for miles came from a single fluorescent fixture above the pumps and a dim bulb in the building's window. I climbed out and started the fueling process. The pump was ancient, mechanical numbers rolling in the display instead of digital. The handle was sticky with years of diesel residue. But it worked, and that's all that mattered. I was watching the numbers roll when the building door opened and an old man shuffled out. 70 years old at least, maybe older. He wore grease-stained coveralls and a Colorado Rockies cap that had seen better decades. His face was deeply lined, weathered by altitude and wind. "Don't see many rigs through here anymore," he said, his voice gravelly. He pulled out a pack of cigarettes, then seemed to think better of it with fuel pumping and put them back. "Yeah, most guys take the southern route," I replied, making the kind of small talk you do at 2 a.m. when you're both grateful for and wary of human contact. "But I'm trying to make up some time." He nodded slowly, studying my truck with an odd intensity. "Freightliner. Blue. Nebraska plates. That's right. You're headed to Alamosa?" I felt a small prickle of unease. "How'd you know that?" He didn't answer the question. Instead, he asked, "You taking the northern route through Sawatch Pass?" "That's the plan." His face went pale, actually drained of color in the fluorescent light. He took a step closer, and I could see his eyes now. They were troubled, frightened even. "Don't," he said. "Take the long way. Go through Gunnison. At 3 hours if you have to. But don't take the northern route." The pump clicked off. My tank was full. I squeezed off the last few cents and hung up the nozzle. "Why not? Road closed." "No. Road's open. That's the problem." I pulled out my credit card to pay. He waved it away. "On the house. Just promise me you'll take Gunnison." Now I was seriously uneasy. Nobody gives away free fuel. "Look, I appreciate it, but I don't understand." He grabbed my arm. Hard. His grip was surprisingly strong for a man his age. "You drove through here before. Same truck. Same route. Same conversation we're having right now." I pulled away gently. "No, this is my first time through here. I usually take I-25, but tonight I needed the shortcut and—" "It's always the first time for you," he interrupted. His voice had taken on a desperate quality. "But I remember. This is the 47th time you've stopped here. 47th time I've warned you. You never listen." Okay, this guy was clearly not well. Isolated mountain outpost, middle of the night, probably hadn't talked to another person in days. Loneliness could do strange things to people. "Sir, I think maybe you're confusing me with someone else. I've never been." "Check your logbook," he said, pointing at my truck. "Check the date. I know what date it is." "Do you?" His eyes were boring into mine now. Really? Just to humor him, and to get away from this increasingly bizarre interaction. I climbed back into my cab and pulled up my electronic logbook on the dashboard display. The date read, July 19th, 2019. I stared at it. That couldn't be right. Today was... I pulled out my phone. July 19th, 2019. My phone's date matched the logbook. But that was impossible. I started this run yesterday. Yesterday was... I tried to remember. Tried to pull up the memory of the date I'd checked before leaving the depot. It was gone. Couldn't remember. The memory was there. I could remember loading the truck, checking the manifest, talking to dispatch. But when I tried to remember what day it was, there was just nothing. A blank space where that information should be. That's not right, I said. But my voice sounded uncertain even to my own ears. The old man was standing by my door now. What year is it? Tell me what year you think it is. It's... I started to say 2024. That's what year it was. I was sure of it. But was I? It's 2019. July 19th, 2019. But even as I said it, I felt the wrongness of it. Like putting on a shirt that doesn't quite fit. The date was there in my logs on my phone, but it felt incorrect at some fundamental level. What's the last thing you remember? The old man asked. Before starting this run, I thought about it. Loading the truck. Checking the cargo pharmaceutical supplies headed to Alamosa. Standard freight. Talking to dispatch. Getting on the road. All normal. All routine. But before that, yesterday, last week, nothing. Just a vague sense of having done this route many times, but no specific memories. No details. I don't. Check your truck, he said quietly. Look at the inspection stickers. Look at the registration. I climbed out and walked around to the driver's side door where the inspection certificate was displayed. The date showed, inspected July 2019, good through July 2020. My registration expires July 2020. Everything showed 2019. But I had clear memories, clear, vivid memories of years after that. The pandemic, the supply chain disruptions, politics, news events. I could remember all of it. Couldn't I? I tried to focus on a specific memory, any specific event from the last 5 years. But they all felt vague, distant, like memories of movies I'd watched rather than things I'd experienced. What's happening to me? I asked. The old man, Pete, I assumed, led me into his office. It was a small, cluttered space with a desk buried under paperwork, a coffee maker that looked older than I was, and a wall covered in trucking memorabilia, maps, old route schedules, photographs. He pulled out a worn notebook from his desk drawer, opened it to a page covered in handwritten entries, dates, times, notes. July 19th, 2019, 2:17 a.m. Blue Freightliner, Nebraska plates, driver, approximately 40 years old, brown hair, blue jacket, heading to Alamosa via northern route. Warned him, didn't listen. He flipped pages. September 3rd, 2019, 1:58 a.m. Same truck, same driver, same route, same warning. Didn't listen. More pages. November 12th, 2019, 2:23 a.m. Same truck, same driver, same conversation. He kept flipping. Dozens of entries, spanning months, then years. March 7th, 2021, 2:11 a.m. Same truck, same driver. Told him he'd been here before. He didn't believe me. June 30th, 2022, 2:34 a.m. Same truck, same driver. Showed him this notebook. He still didn't believe me. October 14th, 2023, 2:19 a.m. Same truck, same driver. The last entry, November 19th, 2024, 2:08 a.m. Same truck, same driver. 47th visit. Tonight's date, tonight's time. Give or take a few minutes. I stared at the notebook, at the entries in fading ink, different pens, different handwriting pressure suggesting they'd been written at different times over years. That's impossible, I whispered. You died up there, Pete said softly. 5 years ago, July 19th, 2019. There was an accident on the northern route through Sawatch Pass. Rockslide. Your truck went off the road. They found the wreck 3 days later. Found you inside. No, that's not. But you keep driving, he continued. You always keep driving. Every few weeks, every few months, you pull in here. Same time, same route, same conversation. For you, it's always July 19th, 2019. Always your first time through. But for me, he gestured at the notebook. For me, it's been 5 years of watching you loop. 5 years of trying to warn you. I backed toward the door. You're crazy. This is insane. I'm alive. I'm here. Check your cargo, he said. Really look at it. Look at the manifest. I stumbled back to my truck. Opened the trailer doors. The cargo was there, stacked pallets of boxes. I grabbed the manifest from the clipboard. Shipper, Denver Medical Supply Receiver, Alamosa Regional Hospital. Date, July 19th, 2019. Contents, Emergency Pharmaceutical Supplies Delivery Window, 6 a.m., July 19th, 2019, 6 a.m. I checked my clock. It was 2:31 a.m. now. I still had time to make the delivery. Still had time to complete the run. If I left now, if I took the northern route. You can't make the delivery, Pete called from the office door. Because the delivery was 5 years ago. The hospital isn't waiting for you. Nobody's waiting for you. You're chasing a deadline that already passed. And when you drive into that rockslide, because you always drive into that rockslide, you loop back, reset, start the run over, forever. I stood there in the cold mountain air, looking at the manifest dated July 19th, 2019. Looking at my truck with its expired registration. Looking at my phone showing an impossible date. How do I stop it? I asked. Pete shook his head sadly. I don't know. I've been asking myself that for 5 years. 47 times I've talked to you. 47 times I've tried to make you understand. But you always leave. Always head for the northern route. And then, a few weeks or months later, you're back. Starting over. What if I don't go? What if I just stay here? I don't know, he admitted. Nobody's ever tried. You always have this urgency, this need to make the delivery, like you can't comprehend not completing the run. I felt it even now, that pull, that professional obligation. The freight needs to move. The hospital is waiting. I have a deadline, but the deadline was 5 years ago, and I died trying to make it. I looked at Pete, at this old man who'd spent 5 years documenting my loop, trying to save a dead man who wouldn't listen. I'll stay, I said. I'll wait here until sunrise. See what happens. Relief flooded his face. Okay, good. Come inside. I'll make coffee. We'll wait together. We sat in his office as the night slowly gave way to dawn. He told me about the accident, about how the rockslide had been unpredictable, how I couldn't have avoided it, about how they'd recovered my body and buried me in Nebraska, where I was from. As the sun touched the eastern peaks, I felt something change, a loosening, like a rope that had been tied around my chest for years suddenly going slack. The date on my phone changed. November 20th, 2024. The present rushed back. 5 years of memories, real memories, the accident, the moment of impact, the darkness, and then the loop, running the same route over and over, never remembering, never moving forward. I think, I started to say, but I was fading. I could see through my hands, could see the office desk through my chest. Pete nodded, understanding. You're letting go. Finally. Thank you, I managed to say, for remembering, for trying. I'll miss our talks, he said with a sad smile. Even if you never remembered them. The sun broke over the mountains, flooding the office with light, and I was gone.